Welcome everyone to episode 9 of the Brick by Brick series by DSG Consumer Partners, where we talk with some of the brightest minds building and surging brands across India and Southeast Asia. For those who don't know DSG Consumer Partners, we are an early stage consumer-focused venture capital fund investing across India and Southeast Asia. We manage more than $300 million on behalf of our investors, and I've proudly invested in more than 78 consumer brands straddling products and services since 2012. My name is Samir Mehta, and I run our Southeast Asia efforts, and I'm delighted to welcome Katherine Desbaillets, the Chief Brand Officer at Salad Stop. And today we will be talking about walking the talk on sustainability rather than pretending to. We have a great audience today spanning early stage consumer focused founders across the geographies. I'm sure there'll be some early stage investors as well as interested folks in sustainability. Throughout the session, if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A tab. I will do my best to integrate them as we talk. And if I can't get to your question then, I've allocated some time at the back end to ensure that we get to it. Okay, Katherine, welcome. I'm delighted to have you. We've been trying to arrange this for a while, but you've been very busy, so I'm glad that I've been able to nail you down. We invested in Salad Stop in 2016, so actually you're one of our earlier companies. And at that time, the goal we collectively had was to build the largest fresh salad QSR brand for ASEAN. And the great news is many years later, we are now 65 plus stores across 7 countries with deep penetration and some very exciting plans in the works. But I think we have folks from all over. They may or may not be very familiar with Salad Stop. Can you dial back the clock a little bit for us and talk a little bit about the genesis of Salad Stop and why it needed to exist?
So we started 13 years ago. At that time, we were the first to enter the market as a salad bar. So I think it was really down to the perfect timing, and we expanded fairly quickly. We opened 3 outlets in the first year because we just needed economies of scale at that point. It's a QSR. It's a salad bar. You can make your salads, wraps. You can make those into wraps and grain bowls as well. We have a few warm items on the bar, but mostly raw. And we are focused on plant-based, a lot of plant-based proteins on the bar as well. So we're about 90% plant-based. So just a few meat items, mainly chicken and fish. And we are, as you mentioned, in 7 countries. And we also have another 3 brands aside from Salad Stop, but Salad Stop is the biggest one for now.
Perfect. Talk to us a little bit about, I'll use the word sustainability and ESG interchangeably today, although there's an interesting argument to be made that they're quite different things. But talk to us a little bit about how sustainability was built into Salad Stop pretty early on, right? So I think walk us back a little bit, if you don't mind, the evolution of sustainability at Salad Stop, why it mattered to you so much. And, I know you have some amazing news around the first net zero carbon store here just in Singapore, for those who are based in Singapore. So talk us through that journey a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure. So it was always part of the company's DNA. It's because just we as a family, when we founded Salad Stop, always believed in those core values. So since the start, we kind of evolved with the market as well. We first needed to have an impact and grow, obviously. And so we started off by introducing Salad Stop with all the different items. We had beef on the menu. We had all the different meats. We just had anything that kind of we knew would please the local palate as well. We then made sure that whatever steps we took in terms of sustainability, so the first big one was to remove a few very high carbon intensive items like beef. But we just really made sure that we did that and educated our consumers. And we were always at the forefront of what was happening. So we were always pushing boundaries, but we also made sure that the market and our consumers were ready for it. And I think that's a really important point. And we at times did make mistakes along the way. An example for that is that 5 years ago, we introduced the 10 cents charge for our brown bags. And the market here in Singapore is not ready for that at all. And so we had to go back to giving them out for free and reintroduce that 2 years ago and kind of waited for bigger chains like H&M and a few other retail stores to charge for the bags. And then it went without a problem. So I think we really did test out a few things. A few things did work out, others didn't. And sometimes when we started small initiatives, then realized that actually it did have a larger impact, or we were able to then partner with someone that was able to then spread the word. So I think it was always looking at what was readily available in the market and also jump onto that bandwagon. Where we can have the most impact would be packaging. So for us, a huge message from the start was reducing single use. And it was not about necessarily the material. It was really the idea of bringing your own container or just reusing the bag or the bowl or the cup or whatever it is. So that was something that we started off 13 years ago. And then obviously the market evolved as well. There was a lot more materials that came into the market, and we were the first ones to test it out. And once again, there were a lot of mistakes that were done along the way. We were convinced by suppliers that certain materials were the best in the market, for example, such as PLA. And we ordered 2 years worth of stock to then realize that it wasn't, and that we were paying a premium for something that was actually not more sustainable. So I think if we're kind of the first ones to push it out in the markets, you will face these kind of issues. But I think customers have always seen that we made effort. And again, communication was key during this whole process.
No, very, very interesting. So, a couple of things I heard, right? One is figure out how you can make a big impact relative to the domain, the industry, the consumer segment that you are addressing, right? In your case, You identified packaging, which of course makes a lot of sense given the number of boxes and utensils and tissue that's going into it. The other thing you talked about was learning as the market goes and as your supplier ecosystem matures.
Yes.
And what is the push and pull on that? That's very interesting. Talk to us a little bit about this net zero outlet. I've been to it. I've had salads there with friends not too long ago. But talk to us a little bit about the genesis of that idea, right? Why? Net zero, people increasingly understand what it means in terms of offsets, in terms of materials, etc. Yeah. What was the genesis of the idea? And is that a desire to have a iconic standalone location, but that can never really be scaled, or is it a showpiece, but it's the way the sausage is made the rest of the time is different? Or is it really the desire to say, hey, this is how things can be, and we will prove to you that they actually can work and be scaled across a wider cross-section of both Singapore and neighboring countries?
So we started off with a carbon assessment, and we did that in-house 3 years ago. And we wanted customers to have the ability to offset their meals. So at the start, it was very simple. And the reason we wanted to do that is we wanted to give that power to our consumers to have an impact. And so we worked with A-Star in Singapore, and we had one person that was just focusing on that. And we got some good results, and we got good numbers that were kind of, I would say, correct as per standard. But we wanted to just ensure that we were doing all of this correct. So we partnered with Unravel Carbon, and they then helped us calculate the footprint of the food, but then everything else as well, which is the operational emissions and the outlets and the embodied emissions as well.
Got it. So just so I understand, and for the benefit of others listening who may not be as familiar and tuned in, one is, of course, the raw produce, right? The grocery items that we're buying. Two is the materials that were being used to construct the location. And three is the movement of human beings are associated with the supply chain, right? For end user delivery and so on and so forth. So trying to view it very comprehensively. Okay.
Exactly. And also the reason we did the carbon assessment is that we wanted to see how we could decrease the carbon footprint of our food. So going kind of towards the 30 by 30 goals, it was how can we source more locally? How can we work with local partners to maybe improve the delivery routes? There's so much that can be done for us internally just to decrease the carbon footprint. And that's where, again, we can have the most impact. But obviously then Unravel Carbon and Pomeroy, which is the architectural firm that we partnered with to build the net zero outlet, worked with us and helped us look at every other part of the business. And so for this net zero store, our motto is beyond net zero. And the reason why we emphasize on the beyond is that we have done everything we could to decrease the carbon footprint of our outlet to as low as possible and only offset what is absolutely necessary. So I think there's a lot of companies nowadays that love the marketing term net zero, and they're just offsetting, right? And for us, we really wanted to make it very clear to our consumers as well that we're not just here to offset all the damage that we're doing, but we're really trying to decrease and continuously improve. And that's why we also really wanted to partner with Unravel Carbon to start looking at, over the years, how can we decrease our carbon footprint by 2 to 3%. And also with Pomeroy looking at creating this very modular system. So the current net zero store is only about 10% more expensive than our current salad stop stores. So again, this is our first store. So I would say in the next year, we would be able to potentially match that. So it's not a higher cost, and it's also, it can be adapted to a market. So we really made sure that this can be replicated in every other market, and it can be localized. So it's really about looking at local wood, refurnished furniture. So it's the playbook that we've created with Pomeroy is very easily adaptable. And that needs to be, as a QSR and looking at expanding very aggressively over the next few years, we had to ensure that this was something that could be replicated.
So this, thank you for that. It's very interesting. It leads us to the next natural question, which is what we hear a lot from early stage consumers, right? Increasingly, when me and the rest of our team assess investments, we have very clear ESG filters that we apply, right? And again, in our case, they're not exclusionary yet. So we don't say we will not invest, but we will identify big risks and then work with the founders to say we have to address these risks over the X number of years. But what we keep getting pushback on, and I think it's fair pushback, I have empathy for the pushback, which is, Samir, I'm barely out of the crib. I'm an early stage company. I barely exist. This is too much of a burden to have to think about, right? And I'm not saying that's all founders, it's a subset, but certainly there is that position. So how do you address internally the supposed challenge between being sustainable and viewing it as a cost and as a burden of doing business versus potentially an accelerant or something that your business stands out for? So how did you guys think about that?
I think looking at overall kind of all our sustainability initiatives, it definitely comes at a cost when we're looking at certain materials that have to be purchased. Our packaging is more expensive, but I do think that we make up with that with a slightly higher price. And I think consumers are then ready to pay that slight premium. And we try to find smart ways to push it. For example, with the brown bag, we did have the 10 cents charge. Some customers were very unhappy about that. Therefore, we introduced the borrow bag tree. So it was just a hat hanger that we bought at IKEA for all outlets. We had our customers give us old recycled bags to hang there. So customers that really didn't want to pay the 10 cents could just borrow a bag. And the outlets actually really got involved in this process. They went to nearby hotels, got the old bags from the hotels, hung it on the tree, and became a little bit of a competition within outlets. So it's all these little things, again, to the consumer. It just shows them that there's a lot of effort done to eliminate single use and to get, again, consumers involved, bringing their bags, getting the outlet team members to get involved as well. And it really doesn't come at a cost. So I would say really looking at what we are currently doing, I wouldn't say that there's anything that is more expensive than if we were not sustainable. The only thing could potentially be packaging, but again, we would add that into the price, so that side premium. Everything else would just be the same. And we try to, it's the same with local sourcing. Surprisingly, I mean, local food is more expensive than imported food. But again, we educate our consumers on that. And when we push out 100% local seasonal, it is the highest price salad on the bar. And we do get questions, but it's a great way to engage.
Got it.
So I think it's about being smart about it and just introducing, again, maybe it doesn't have to be huge. It's small little steps. Like we give a free topping if a person brings their own. Again, you could say, we're not using one of our bowls and we kind of save on that cost. And so it does kind of balance itself out. We give 50 cents again for if a person brings their own cup. So it's a lot of small initiatives that are impactful in their own way, but is not really a burden for us at this point.
Got it. Very, very interesting. And I think, what I want to talk to you a little bit further about is this consumer premium angle, right? Like there's a massive amount of research. I track a lot of this research. McKinsey came out with something which was largely US data, I would say, around consumers are now willing, able, and have demonstrated a desire to pay a premium for things that they can understandably view as sustainable. In Asia, when we do this research so far, and I'm talking about all aspects of Asia, right? So I'm not talking about Singapore, which is one of the world's affluent cities. I'm talking about Indo, I'm talking about Vietnam, I'm talking about countries at various different levels of development. The stated preference for, I would like it for it to be sustainable versus the exhibited preference of, are you happy to pay a 10, 15, 20% premium for something that's sustainable? There's a lot of gap between my statements of what I would like to do versus my exhibited behaviors, right? Now, of course, that our view is that gap will close. More and more people will behave the way they tell you they want to behave. But how do you view that gap today, right? You operate in markets that are a combination of developing and developed. How do you view this gap between the consumer wants sustainable, but is unwilling to pay up for it? And then we have to do some clever things to either, no, I don't want to use the word hide it, but slip it in a way that they don't understand the price of what being sustainable means.
Yeah, so we've tested this in the net zero outlets. In all of our other outlets, we give customers the option to offset their meal. So they have to opt in. And for the Capita Spring outlet, we automatically opt them in. So they actually have to opt out if they don't want to pay that amount. And it's, for example, it's 20 cents.
Okay.
So, I mean, on a $18 bill, 20 cents is minimal, but we saw kind of a 90% success rate on that if they automatically opted in. So only 10% would opt out. But if we give them the choice to opt in, it's 3% that opt in.
So this is human psychology coming to the fore, which is designing things in a way that takes decision-making almost out of the hands of the consumer and guide them to the right decision. Okay.
Exactly. And you see that a small percentage will be very upset because maybe it's not clear enough and it's not, that they were not aware that they were charged 20 cents. But I think overall, it went very well. And I think it's definitely something that we'll continue to push. And if customers do write in your offsetting, I think what's again very important is that we are also doing our part. So they're offsetting their meal, but we are offsetting the whole store.
Right. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is, listen, there's some smart consumer design that can help you get the resources to do what's right. And there's some experimentation required to figure out where your consumer in any given geography, any given domain, what he or she is willing to embrace. Shifting focus a little bit to B Corp. We have a number of companies in the portfolio that are either B Corp certified or on their way to being B Corp certified. I know you're on the way to getting B Corp certified. Just to get our audience up to speed, because not everybody may be familiar with B Corp, it'd be wonderful if you can share what the B Corp certification is, why is it important, right? And how are you planning on getting there?
Yeah, so B Corp are just basically companies that are verified by the B Lab to meet the highest standards of social and environmental performance. And I think most importantly, transparency and accountability. And for us, the reason why we're embarking on getting the certificate is that we want to cover all aspects of sustainability. I think being in the F&B, we focused a lot on the environmental side, obviously for us, food, local sourcing, packaging and all that. And we did realize in the process that the social side has taken a backseat. So this has really pushed us to look at the company as a whole, and also to get the corporate team a lot more involved and the team on the ground. So for us, it's net zero was a great start, but I think B Corp really looks at a lot more.
You view it as an extension of the good work already done on net zero and a natural endpoint.
Yes. And also keeping that kind of accountability moving forward and to track everything. It's something that, we've always pushed sustainability. We're no experts, so we're also learning as we go. But I think this kind of gives us a good framework.
Got it. Interesting. No, it's relatively consistent with what some of our other companies tell us, right? About why the motivation for it, the work required to get there is more expansive, but it's a journey. It's not something you can just turn on overnight. Culturally, you have to be ready for it, but it's a worthwhile journey to go on. Let's think a little bit about sustainability also from the lens of business results, right? Ultimately, we are building economic engines, right, which deliver things for people in the form of improved livelihoods. Given that a lot of work we do is in developing Asia, livelihoods is where it all starts for us, right? We at DSG, interestingly, today is the launch of our first sustainability report. We're proud of that. It'll be going out in the public domain. We'll see what response we get, because we are starting with the position of we invest in India, Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is beyond Singapore. Our first objective is to allow economic engines to prosper, which means improvement for people with prosperity. Absent that, it is very hard, in our opinion, to accomplish much on the peace and planet side of the equation, which is something that the UN Sustainable Development Goal Framework lays out. How did you go about prioritizing it, if at all you ever thought about it in that lens? Because our view is that a lot of it is just a balancing act, right? You have to have a real business, without which you can't make the investments required to deliver anything on the planet. Did you think about it in this way, or did you just pick things across the board and start delivering them faster? Just wanted to get your sense of how you thought about it.
Exactly that. I think we never had this grand plan. We were just implementing sustainable initiatives wherever we could over the years. And things just happened. So then again, with the net zero, it really, we are here today, but 3 years ago, we never thought that we would have a net zero. We never started with the aim of going net zero. And just the right partners came in at the right time. And now obviously with this first net zero store, because we've seen the success of it, and I think our partners internationally as well are very interested with this idea, we have now planned to go net zero by 2030.
Across the entire footprint.
Yes.
Wow, amazing.
And so now working towards that, and eventually, getting the B Corp for Singapore, and also then pushing that out to our international markets.
Got it. No, makes good sense. And I think the one interesting lens here for a lot of folks listening in, thinking about what they do in their various businesses, or what it is, taking small, tangible, measurable steps, right? That's actually one of the title things in our report, which is there's a lot of tall, empty promises. The amount of greenwashing that's happening across the board is really quite impressive at some level. People are raising funds against ESG, and then you delve into the funds and you realize what's actually happening. You have ETFs that are publicly listed that talk about, we're a green fund, and then they have, the oil majors of the world as large holdings.
Yeah, exactly.
It beggars belief to me. Our preference and what our advice tends to be, just make small, measurable, tangible steps. And I think you use a really important word today, which is hold yourself accountable. Even if it's watching, if you are holding yourself accountable, you will be on a positive step towards that journey. Understood and very clear. So on that subject, I have a question that I'm going to impose on you. Shiv asks, what are a couple of major levers from a value chain point of view where the premium that we talked about, right? Where being green requires having a premium to the consumer. How could you flip it, where by virtue of being green, being more sustainable, you actually benefit from a discount, right? Have you ever thought about that? Which is, we do all these great things. We should get some benefit from this for ourselves. Why must it cost more? I don't know if you have any interesting thoughts on that.
Yeah, so we do incentivize customers if they bring their own containers, if they order a plant-based meal. And we also have our own app and loyalty and pre-order. And we also reward customers for being sustainable. So we think that's really important. And that's been added to our loyalty in the last 3 years. So
give me a tangible example of that, just so that it activates people's imagination. So if I come into the salad store and I say, okay, today I'm going to choose to be healthier and choose to be better for the planet, and I'll go plant-based today, right?
Yeah.
Then I accrue some credit in the form of loyalty points that are different than if I'd ordered a animal protein meal.
That's it. Or you would get, so currently you can choose 7 toppings, standard toppings, you would get an 8th if you order plant-based. And if you bring your own bowl, then you get a 9th topping. So you get 2 extra toppings.
Do you find that consumers are taking advantage of this? Is this that drives behavioral change, which is ultimately what we're trying to nudge in the direction?
Yes. So that's really interesting, because we did this study with Muse. Muse is a Singapore-based company that started with reusable bowls that you can borrow from the store. So you just scan their QR code, you can borrow and then return.
Okay.
So they pushed out a promo for one full month. There was $2 off that they funded, $2 off per salad if you use their bowls. And we saw 20% uptake for that month because there was a $2 discount. And normally our uptake for BYO, so bring your own, or Muse, is 3% for that outlet. What's interesting, after the discount was over, that number came back to 3%.
Got it.
So it was not about making that conscious eco decision, but it was like, I get the $2 off, so I'll make the effort.
Got it.
And
interestingly, but the behavior was not sticky enough.
That's it.
To survive the lack of a discount.
Yes. So even though we introduced that convenience, because we really did believe at the start that the reason why people didn't use reusable containers is because you forget it at home and it's just not convenient in store. And when we realized that actually it's not the case, they will go out of their way to scan a QR code, get a bowl if they get a higher discount. So the free topping didn't move the needle, but the $2 did.
Got it. So I think we don't have great answers for you, I'm afraid. But what we do know is that if you could indeed deliver a discount for behaving better in this very specific, practical way, then the uptake becomes very significant.
Yes. And I wish I could say that then it would somehow stay there, but unfortunately in our test it hasn't. So
okay. No, but maybe we'll figure something else out. One of the questions that my team was very keen on having me ask you, right, was early stage founders. You were an early stage founder once. I know you still are an early stage founder, but they often ask, how do I start, right? So I am young. I care about the planet. I care about reducing my footprint. I don't want to put a bad product out in the world or a bad service out in the world. I want to start with better behaviors from day one as a company, right? How do I go about starting, right? So, and I'll share some examples with you from other companies as we start talking about this and what I have seen our other founders do at a very early stage. But how would you provide advice to someone, right? With all this years of experience, this journey that you've been on, leading to net zero, leading to B Corp in the near future, if you have to roll back the clock, could you give people some advice on, hey, think about these three things when you get started?
So I think for us, it was always about being honest and transparent. So we always kind of pushed out this message that we are not perfect, but we're trying to be better than yesterday. And that we couldn't implement everything at once. As I think we discussed before, it was you still ultimately need to be successful as a business. But we communicated this with our customers all the time. So I think it's really about offering a product that is honest and that fills that specific gap. And really being able to pinpoint what that is. So when we first started, it was just healthy food, salads. It just wasn't in the market. But if we wouldn't have evolved very quickly, we would have just fallen behind very, very quickly because the market just evolved so fast. So then we had to constantly evolve, but our main message was always to be honest and transparent and to deliver the best product we possibly could in that category. So we always ensured that our products were that the core, which is for us was salad. So the core, our ingredients were always of the highest quality. So that's something that was number one priority. So it doesn't matter how many sustainable initiatives you do on the side, how beautiful your packaging is. If the core product is not tasty, fresh, and what people expect, you're just not going to make it. So that I think was the focus from day one. And then everything else was secondary. Very
interesting. And I think this speaks to a question that somebody sort of tagged in here, which was, is sustainability, right, a add-on to or a differentiator when all else is equal, right? So if I have two comparable things, which I know is hard, but let's say we could idealize two comparable things, then I will choose a more sustainable option, all else being equal. It's what tips things in your favor, but it is not what creates the impetus to choose.
Exactly.
Is that a fair way of describing it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. No, but that is very interesting. And by the way, our research in Southeast Asia so far corroborates that, which is being sustainable and being demonstrably sustainable certainly helps, but it is not key consideration 1, 2, 3, 4, or frankly 5, right? There's 5 other things that come before sustainability hits the agenda.
Yes.
And that's why for us and our founders, it's very interesting because, again, the noise of the research versus the reality of how customers are behaving, there is a lot of dissonance that needs to be bridged. Very insightful.
And again, I think we're not just looking at immediate results. We're really looking at progressing in what we do for the next 10 years, right? So, I mean, the journey to net zero is not something that can be done in a day. I mean, it's a very long process. So even if we feel that our consumers might not understand the whole message or at the moment, they don't choose us over another salad bar that might be $1 cheaper. But we're really looking at this long term.
So on that long term, we're in the business of investing in very early stage businesses. Sometimes pre-product, pre-revenue. Oftentimes there's some product or service, but very little revenue. So we're always building 10, 15 years out. That's what we're thinking about. So on that note, if I could get you to put your magician hat on and your crystal ball in your hand, as you think about trends in sustainability over the next 10 years, are there 2 or 3 things that in your mind you see step changes coming, right, which are not as well understood by folks who are not operators in the playing field battling it out?
So in the F&B space, I would say definitely plant-based.
Okay.
So that's, and I think in the health space, really looking at nutrition down to a personalized level and kind of having all of that integrated with sustainability. So looking at eating locally and kind of F&B establishments being transparent about that information.
Okay.
And I still think, we can see it with airlines and hotels, the offsetting part, offsetting your trip, offsetting your stay, offsetting your food. I think that's something that can go across all industries. And it's where consumers can play their part. And it's something that's very easy and straightforward. So I think that is here to stay as well.
Got it. So I heard plant-based food, traceability, sustainability on the source of ingredients, if you will.
Yes.
And third is heavily personalized nutrition, which is what I'm individually very interested in. But let's tackle all 3 because we have made investments in plant-based companies, as you know, and some of them are suppliers to you. We appreciate that. And we are looking at personalized nutrition very, very carefully as a long-term investment. And increasingly, I would say more and more of our food businesses are looking at their supply chains, irrespective of whether they're fully integrated or not, and asking for more traceability into their supply chains. And then the suppliers will react to that because if there's consumer demand, then the backward flow will take place. So let's talk about plant-based. What's your sense of the take-up rates for plant-based food? Let's maybe just talk about Singapore as a starting point, right? Is this something that you see as something that will be 20% of us will become flexitarians in some way, shape, or form in Singapore, where we will have anointed plant-based days or anointed plant-based meal times, where, all my lunches are plant-based or all my dinners are plant-based? How do you hypothesize that panning out? Because as you know, plant-based has gone through its hype phase, I'll call it, over the last 2-3 years from an investment dollars point of view, from a valuation point of view. And now, certainly, I don't want to say it's doldrums time, but it is a more challenged sector from an excitement point of view. How do you view that?
So I think when we first kind of saw the whole plant-based craze, and especially in the protein space, so plant-based protein alternatives, it was very highly processed. So we had Impossible Beyond Meat that came in. I think maybe consumers were a little bit reluctant to because it's also the trend towards plant-based is also kind of a health journey, right? People wanting to eat more healthy. And so it was quite contradictory at that time when all these things came into the market. Now that we're seeing some more whole foods that give the same texture and the same taste, such as Karana and Fable, I think we should be seeing a much bigger shift. And also, obviously, the educational side. And that's where we're pushing heavily is really to say that the protein, that you can still get enough proteins, you can still get enough amino acids, you can still get all of that all the nutritional benefits from these plant-based. So I think definitely with all these new healthier alternatives coming into the market, we will see a shift. And we see it ourselves. We've seen a huge shift in the last 2 years.
Okay, so good. So you're long plant-based. That's music to every founder building against that theme. Let's talk a little bit about personalized nutrition. So let me give you what I would like to see, all right? So I have, like most human beings, limited willpower, right? I talk about wanting to be healthier and leading a healthier lifestyle. But as the day progresses and my willpower recedes because I have a cognitive load, right? I'm making decisions. I'm thinking about other stuff. When it comes time to make a decision on what to order, whether it's at a salad stop or any other place, I will often make unwise choices. What I want is if you could just scan my phone or my watch and say, we have 100 menu items, but really the only 3 that matter to you, Samir, because you have these goals. This is your calorie count for the day. Here's how many steps you've taken. Here are the 3 options you get. They're perfect options for you. They're tasty options. You take the cognitive load away from you. Is that one example of personalized nutrition that you see coming down the pike? Because my view is we have to take friction out of the consumer experience. The more decisions consumers have to make, they rely then on what is comfortable, what is easy versus what is wise.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what we're working towards. It's really also to integrate with fitness apps, with your Apple Watch. So you can track everything from the exercise that you're doing to the food you eat, with the exercise that you did that morning, how many calories you're eating, how much protein you should be having. And because all our concepts are based on portioning and creating your own, we can create millions of different variations. So, right. and I think that's where we see this great fit, is that we're really able to customize the perfect meal for every individual.
Got it. That would be amazing. I'm looking forward to that day. I don't have to make any decisions about what to eat. Okay. An interesting question, which is a little bit different than what we thought we would talk about, but I think is very interesting. Joan asks around F&B staffing, which is notoriously difficult, right? QSR retaining, motivating QSR staff is very challenging. We see it across all our businesses in India and Southeast Asia. Is the sustainability programs or ESG programs an advantage in attracting and retaining staff? Are there other things that you do around the communication of what we stand for that attract a particular kind of workforce? Right? So that's how I'll sort of pitch that question to you.
So definitely, I think that for our team members that have been with us for many years, they've stayed because of what we stand for. So I think you do get that longevity. It's for an immediate hire might still be tricky. I mean, definitely in the corporate office, most people that join us have a passion for the brand. But I think in the outlets themselves, we do a lot of training, and sustainability is a big topic. And we have seen that they also, we've had a lot of our team members speak to us to say they're eating so much better. They've influenced their own families. So it does change them and their whole ecosystem. And we've seen that happen a lot. So we do have talks as well at the corporate office on health. We have an in-house nutritionist that speaks to the team members as well. So we are trying to really build that ecosystem that would be able to improve everyone's lives. And it definitely is transcending down to everyone, even down to the outlets.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense to me. Again, when we see what works at other QSRs or, even retail services concepts, some connection to the brand and brand identity and personal identity, meshing of that is quite important. So it's great to hear that that's one of the reasons that, sort of folks come to you and stay with you.
Yeah.
I'm looking at other questions. I think we've addressed some of these questions already. But let me ask you something I wanted to talk to you about, because I think you've done a lot more thinking about this than most, right? One of the trends that we increasingly see at DSG with folks building around food is this idea of food as medicine. And we eat 3 times a day, sometimes increasingly many more times a day, because people are having either much smaller meals or they're foregoing meals and having 6, 7, 8 snacks a day rather than having full meals. But as we understand many aspects of gut health better, what we're doing to our guts via the food we put in is becoming, I would say, at least at the cutting edge, more and more awareness exists. How do you, beyond the personalization component, is there any other way you think about this food as medicine trend? And how do you then build that into the salad stop proposition, whether it's from the existing QSR salad concept or any adjacent concepts that you might be considering? So
again, I think always looking at having the basis as being whole foods. And when we bring in any products from partners, if it's a Karana or Fable and it's not kind of a raw product, we make sure that it's as clean as possible. So I think that has always been important. And again, I think, healthy it's really a buzzword as well. Like, what's healthy? I mean, if somebody was to eat a salad with a really heavy Caesar dressing with a lot of mayo and sugar, that would not be considered healthy anymore, right? So I think it's for us, we've always looked at it and again communicated as we are transparent in that sense that we are as clean as we possibly can be, and I think it's just all part of that educational journey and for customers to be aware of that. I think what you mentioned before, I think also people kind of don't know where to start, and there's always these misconceptions of not getting enough protein or that you'll be hungry after a salad. So it's it's really just showing to people that you can have all your meals that are healthy and get all the nutrients that you need, and that it pays off at the end, and you can really feel the difference. And we have customers that come to us 5 days a week, and they eat ourselves for lunch and dinner, and they really say that they see a big difference. They don't feel they're tired at their desk at lunch. It's I think just more and more people feel that food affects everything, even your mood and your focus and your energy levels. I mean, everything. It's not just.
What I'm very excited about. As some of the tracking devices, right? The Apple Watches, the Oura-rings, the Whoop bands. There's any number of them. Just talking about the ones that I know somewhat.
Yes.
That is starting to give all consumers, and again, these are relatively educated, a bit forward-thinking. So I acknowledge that it is not the belly of the market; it is the tip of the spear. But a lot of people I know, just in my friend circle, are looking at, oh, I ate this, and here's what my tracking device is telling me about my blood sugar, or is telling me about XYZ. And as this technology improves and gets integrated, then I think people's ability to figure out what food groups to exclude for themselves, rather than making the very drastic plant-based or not plant-based choice, because that to many meat lovers, and I'll put myself in that category, feels too drastic. But if I knew that, okay, during lunch, avoid it because you're not going to be productive, or really, Samir, steak is not for you anymore. Your body can't process it very well. So certainly don't eat it at night, which is sort of what I've learned accidentally. I think this will be a big catalyst, by the way, for plant-based in general.
Yes.
Because as we learn more, folks will be able to make better decisions for themselves rather than sort of trial and erroring their way in, or having to make some very drastic choices, which I think a lot of folks are not ready to make yet, right? About saying, I'm going to become completely vegetarian or vegan, if culturally I didn't come from a place where that was normal. Okay, I'm asking for the last set of questions. So I've already taken up a lot of Katherine's time, so I don't want to keep her on much longer. So I'll take the last couple of questions if anybody has anything. I'm just going back and seeing if I've skipped over something. I have. We've talked about the consumer premium and the fact that it's not clear whether there is a deep desire to pay it yet, but you have to build it in other ways. We talked about trends a little bit, about what's coming down the pike. Okay, well, if no other questions, thank you very much, Katherine. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Hour of your life with us. I'm very excited about what is to come. We are very excited about what's to come at Southstop. I think the next 3-4 years will be very, very important for us. And I think you are, in some extent, an icon bearer for Singapore. On the QSR side, there are not many F&B chains that think, behave, and act like you. And that's why we felt it was really important to get you to talk about sustainability, because you have so many accomplishments to show for about actually doing something rather than just talking about it in words. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone who with us. And I look forward to speaking to you again. Take care.